You delayed plans to dine in the Twin Towers on 9/11.
Everything was sort of in line for us to be there. Reservations were made, car service was booked. I come from a time where fax machines were technology. I was, let's call it in today's terms, a startup. Work hard until you don't need to introduce yourself anymore. Let's not try to be everywhere. I started allocating no less than 20% of my income annually to, as my income increased, I spread out. If I got called in to the neighbor's house to say, my neighbor just got 450, sell my house, I would list it to anyone that is thinking of real estate. You're top of mind.
Faisal Susiwala, the #1 individual residential RE/MAX agent in the world. I'm excited to welcome Faisal Susiwala, the #1 individual residential RE/MAX agent in the world and the author of The Real Deal. I've listened to the audiobook multiple times and have applied many of the lessons to my own business. I'm very happy to welcome today to the podcast, Faisal Susiwala.
Hi, David. How are you?
Oh, very well, thanks. Very well. I'm so glad you're making some time for this. It's pretty wild the amount of business you do, and but I'm going to start off with something a little different here. You delayed plans to dine in the Twin Towers on 9/11. How did that experience shape your perspective and your journey to become the #1 RE/MAX agent in the world?
It was a turning point in my life where, you reflect on all the things that led you to the point that what happened that morning. Why wasn't I there? What made me change my plans? Why did I decide not to keep the reservation and defer it to lunch? And of course, we know that that would never happen. And in the days that followed the attack, we were stranded in New York City. Nothing was open. There was a MacDonald's open and a movie theater open, and that was about the end. That was about the extent of what was open. We could not get an airline ticket out. We could not get a rental car. We could not get on a boat. We could not get on a bus or a train to leave New York City. So those 4 days, my wife and I spent just reflecting on the fact that she was pregnant 6 months with our son who wasn't born yet, and like there has to be a greater purpose. Like what stopped us from being there? Everything was sort of in line for us to be there. Reservations were made. The car service was booked. We stayed out late the night before, and typically, my wife is very much a schedule oriented individual. I'm not so much. I like to sleep in. And it was funny, one of my brokers at the time actually stated that, don't worry, he won't be there because cell phone lines were down. And my brother knew what my plans were, what my reservation was. And the broker said, don't worry, Faisal wouldn't be there that early anyways. And it was true. I was able to convince her not to go that morning. And
They would have been so worried.
yeah. And you look back and you say, okay, there has to be a greater purpose. And you think, okay, I want to make a difference. I want to, it's bonus time. What I'm living now, ever since that time has been bonus time because one split second decision could have made us just continue with our plans as scheduled. And we would have been on the 104th floor of the Twin Towers that morning.
Unbelievable. You've been a realtor since you were in high school,
Yes.
and you continue to reach new heights. How do you maintain that energy throughout the years?
It's the love of it. And it might sound cliche, but I actually and truly love what I do. I love the fact that each day is different. I love the opportunities each day brings. I've also looked at my career as not a one skew or a two skew career where it's listing homes, selling homes.
Hmm.
I've learned to use my license to get involved in development, syndications, property management, so many other facets of this industry that you can monetize your license and also have things that keep you interested. I invest in startup companies. I'm a venture capitalist for real estate startups, which
Hmm.
are tech-based. So it keeps me very interested in what's going on in the field, how it's evolving, where it's going, what changes are coming, and adapting to those changes, embracing those changes. I come from a time where fax machines were technology and print media was the only way to market. Fast forward 36 years from when I started, everything's gone digital. AI is now here. So all of that adaptation has allowed me to reach those new heights continuously. The willingness to learn, the willingness to keep an open mind, not painting myself into, well, this is how it's always been done attitude has allowed me to stay current. And really, our way of engagement with our clients, with our audience per se, is very different today than it was 20 years ago. The way we sell is very different today than it was 25, 30 years ago. We are really translating information and we are acting as consultants, not so much as salespeople. And
Hmm.
when you take that approach, your entire demeanor changes from being that salesy, um, sort of that salesy textbook idea
Hmm.
to you're really someone that becomes a part of someone's journey in purchasing or selling real estate and or building wealth or investing, and you become part of their team, and that's
Hmm.
where our system has been sort of, I think, moving towards now.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about the developments with you convincing your first broker, who had worked with your family prior to that, Mr. Menery, to get a cell phone. And this is in the early 90s, right? You convinced him to get a cell phone and for you to be able to be more, with it in time. And then fast forward to today, listings online, you no longer need a realtor just to say, oh, here are the listings. If that's all you're doing, then you're going to be behind your clients. So, and they're looking to you for leadership and guidance and help, and expertise and analysis that you can bring from your experience. So, if you can combine all these tools we have online and the AI with your experience, then you're truly of value to the client versus if you do fall back behind, and this is something you emphasize a lot, and you like you were just talking about, um, uh, it doesn't provide you the same advantage. Now, I think there's some amazing old school realtors who just, negotiation skills, or there's different things that they bring to the table that maybe it's not technology as on the forefront, but I have tremendous respect for. But when you think about what you're doing and how you keep moving forward and how after all these years, I mean, it's been 36 years, right? And now you're still developing your techniques and what you bring to the playing field. It's pretty wild.
It is. And today, as you mentioned, clients are very much in real time getting information
Hmm.
thrown at them constantly through various apps, through various channels. Um, it's how it's interpreted and how it relates to their needs and wants.
Hmm.
And that's the role that we as salespeople need to really understand that we're not there to shove an idea down someone's throat. We're there to analyze it, consult with them, give them additional information, dig deeper for them, and really hold their hand to the finish line so that you become their person when it comes to
Yeah,
all
right.
things.
They're agent. So you're an agent of them. You're trying to help enhance what they're doing to bring more for them.
Yes, precisely.
In your book, you summed up your principle of return on influence as be everywhere and become the brand. Can you talk about how you approach that in the Cambridge, Ontario market and how you're still, and are you still spending 25% of your revenue on marketing? I mean, that's huge. I'm assuming it must have scaled back with the size of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with that. So in the earlier days, it was even 50% of my gross revenue that was going towards marketing expenses because I was, let's call it in today's terms, a startup. So,
Yep.
a startup has a burn rate. You're not profiting for years
Mhm,
or many months before you start seeing some turnover.
mhm,
So your startup cost in our business is really marketing, getting
mhm.
your name out there. And like the old saying goes, work hard until you don't need to introduce yourself anymore. And
Right.
that was the scaling down approach that I took, was very much let's not try to be everywhere or everything to everyone.
Hmm.
I had a very focused neighborhood that I wanted to become known in.
Hmm.
And I lived in that neighborhood
Hmm.
and I made sure I cultivated that neighborhood. I was part of that community. I was sending flyers out there. I was contributing to any of the community centers in that area. I was doing all things that I could do at a very early stage in my
Hmm.
career to make sure that I had a presence. And
Yep.
that presence ultimately started multiplying. And
Hmm.
as that presence multiplied, as more business came in, I started uh, allocating no less than 20% of my income annually, gross
Hmm.
income annually, to marketing. That was for a solid 20 years of my
Wow.
career
Hmm.
that I was doing that. So the numbers, yes, started increasing significantly. The income started increasing significantly, but that's not where I thought, okay, I've got X factor coming in here, so I'm just going to now cut back. As my income increased, I spread out further. So I went from my neighborhood to my general community, from
Yep.
my community to my city, from my city to my region.
Yep.
And now I'm marketing to the entire region of Waterloo, which is where we are based out of,
Hmm.
1 hour west of Toronto. And becoming sort of a household name, synonymous with the industry, almost to a point where you're everywhere to anyone that is thinking of real estate. You're top of mind because
Hmm.
you're in their mailboxes, you're in their social media, you're on their Google ads, you're on the back of buses, you're on bus shelters, you're at the community events, you're at the sporting events, you're at the sponsorships, you're holding events, you're sponsoring anything to do with that local community, you're donating back to local mandates, shelters, food banks, and I've taken that approach to growing my business. And that's all part of reinvesting back in the people that have invested in you, giving back to the community that has done so much for you. And yes, today I have scaled my cost has organically scaled down to about 5 to 7% of
Okay,
my
cool.
gross income. So
Hmm.
as you start gaining market share, as you start creating a higher income, yeah, can I spend 20 or 25% on marketing? Yes, but it would be at a very large scale at that point where, you're on major arenas at
Hmm.
that budget, if that's what you want to do.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't suggest that unless you're in a major city center that you would need to do that type of thing. And
Hmm.
you have to evaluate whether or not the return is going to be there for you.
Yeah, and also whether or not you want to step into that role, because in order to utilize that budget effectively, whenever those inbound calls came and whenever those persons said, "Hey, Faisal, I need you for this," you need to be able to handle it. So you've put a lot of work into developing systems. You have several people on staff now, so that you're able to still give people that personal touch and your insights while delegating some of the responsibilities to other people so that you're able to provide your highest value to that number of people. I got to assume at a certain point, a person is limited by their capacity.
Absolutely. And that's where the scaling down comes in. For me, I stand by the fact and I market the fact that you get me 100% of the
Hmm.
time. So when somebody calls me to list, whether it's a lease, whether it's a basement apartment, multi-million dollar home, or an average priced home, I'm the guy that shows up at their front door with my briefcase to make the presentation to them.
Hmm.
I'm the guy that lists their property, and I'm the one that will oversee every aspect of the sale of their home.
Hmm.
I don't work with buyers unless they're calling on that specific listing. So my
Right.
time, believe it or not, is actually available to 100% devote to my seller
Hmm.
at all times and to the buyer who's interested in purchasing
Hmm.
my seller's listing, which
Yep.
increases my ability to double end. And I know in some regions you're not allowed to double end, but in our
Mhm.
region we are.
Yeah, same here.
It allows me to create a lead generation business, which I've been doing,
Hmm.
where if that specific buyer does not purchase my seller's home,
Hmm.
I'm not saying, well, there's a house next door. Let me show that one to you. At that point, I ask them if they're working with an agent. And if they're not, then I will refer them to someone either in my marketplace that can work with them as a buyer, or
Hmm.
if they decide they want to move out of town and move somewhere else or they're going elsewhere, then I'll refer them outside. So it's just creating a referral network, but I'm the lead generation for that,
Yeah.
for that.
Does that make up a big part of your business?
I wouldn't say a big part. I would say probably 15 to 20% of my business
Okay.
is just sending out leads and letting them run with it because those buyers typically are not top shelf buyers that are saying we're looking for a real estate agent. They're just looking to buy the house and calling the listing agent to see if it's available.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so it's not really where because I'm not actively out there marketing buyers.
Hmm.
I'm actively marketing my listings. And
Yeah.
the unintended consequence of that is that I end up with buyers who may or may not have an agent that they're working with. So I
Yeah.
always ask the question. It would be silly not to ask the
Yeah.
question.
Of course.
And I don't ever take that buyer on and say, well, let me. In fact,
Just
I've
start
had buyers.
showing you and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I don't do open houses. A buyer doesn't come into my listing and I'm not trying to sell them the one. Even if they ask to see the house next door, I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't show that to you, but I can refer you to somebody that will.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. Um, Since releasing the Real Deal in 2020, there have been significant changes in markets throughout Ontario and much of Canada. Are you still using your bidders, not buyers pricing strategy of pricing the property below the market, setting a date for offers and aiming for multiple offers with bidding parties? How has that process evolved, particularly after the changes in interest rates between mid 2022 and today?
So that's very interesting that you asked that. In my marketplace, Cambridge, Ontario, Kitchener-Waterloo, uh, bidding to buy was never a thing. I started doing this. I was the first one out of the gates back in 2008, 2009 with this whole idea that I'm going to price it under where I expect it to sell for. I'm going to hold offers for at least a week
Yep.
and let's see what kind of activity we get. And then we'll have an offer date or an offer party.
Hmm.
And in those days, it was me meeting at the seller's house. Buyers, agents would come in, bring their offer, they'd sit on the car, we'd go back and forth and be running back and forth. It was a lot of fun. Sometimes we'd invite them all into the house and we'd have give them separate rooms to sit in while we're doing this. And it was kind of a little bit of a party, literally a party.
Hmm.
What was interesting about that was I got boycotted by all the local agents. Like, who the hell do you think you are? This is not Vancouver. This is not Toronto. That's not how we do it here. This is not the way it's done. But the unique thing about my region was that this entire new audience of buyers was starting to show up because we were 30 to 35% cheaper than the GTA.
Hmm.
And that is only a 45-minute to 1 hour drive. But so there was value.
Hmm.
A lot more people were starting to work from home. So a
Yep.
lot of the transition was starting to happen. And the unique thing was that the GTA already had this bidding to buy mandate. Vancouver already had that. Many of these areas had it. So those agents were already accustomed to putting bids in. Those buyers already knew that if they wanted to buy a home in the GTA, if the asking price was 799, chances are it was going to sell for 900.
Hmm.
So identifying that that's going to be my audience, I started doing that
Hmm.
and it worked like a charm. I
Right.
started advertising in GTA saying drive 35 minutes, save $350,000. Agents started coming, buyers started coming. I
Mhm.
started gaining market share. As I
Mhm.
started gaining market share, more and more people started listing with me and saying, do what you did for my neighbor. Let's do, you got them 5,000 over asking. And it was literally 5 or 10,000 over asking. It
Right.
wasn't like 2 or 300,000.
Right.
Fast forward to 2017, 2018, when we started really booming in the area,
Mhm.
many agents who were against that started adapting and
Right.
adopting that way of selling. Then you get into 2021, 2022. Everybody was doing that.
Mhm.
Homes were selling for 300,000, 400,000, $200,000 over asking. And then the bottom dropped out.
Mhm.
And by mid 2022, everybody said, okay, we can't do that anymore. We have to go back to traditional way of selling, which is you start a little bit higher, they come in a little bit lower, you meet in halfway, and that's
Yep.
the way we've always done
Mhm.
it. That's what we're going back to. I didn't change.
Mhm.
I didn't have to change because I was never just trying it out. That was a part of my business plan. That was part
Mhm.
of my marketing strategy. That was the way I created buyers for my properties. If you list it low, you get more viewings, more offers, higher selling price.
Yeah.
That was always the plan. And I
Yeah.
continued with that. And I've had great amount of success, including this year. Last year, 2023, I sold 422 homes. This year, I'm at 386 homes.
Right.
And I haven't swayed away from that strategy of pricing it a little bit lower. Of course, we're not. In the peak of the market, we would be pricing it $200,000 below what we expected.
Mhm.
Today, we price it 50 to $75,000 below what we expected, and often I'll get 100,000 over what
Mhm.
I'm asking. So it's still a win-win situation for my sellers.
Okay, wow. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Similar to trends in Cambridge, Ontario, but on a smaller scale, many are selling their Ontario homes to buy similar, more affordable properties in Prince Edward Island, which is the market that I work in. What strategies would you suggest to leverage this trend for my listings?
I think this trend works no matter where you are.
Mhm.
You're going to have people, agents mostly, push back and say, well,
Mhm.
we're not going to show your listings if this is what you're doing. This is nonsense. Why? Let me ask you, in your province, have you been doing this? Has this ever been a thing or never been a thing?
It's not very much a thing right now, I would say. There has been some, and currently, I mean, currently the the price to list ratio is sitting at around 96%. So the average house sale is going about 4% below asking currently in the market. But there are individual sales, and I've been a part of some where it goes to multiple offers and it goes over. Um, but it's certainly it would be there. I feel like there'd be some resistance.
I love that. You be the pioneer. Do it
Hmm.
because that is the right way, in my opinion,
Hmm.
to get the most for your seller.
Yeah.
Let the market decide. Let the
Hmm.
market decide what that home is worth. Now, I'm not saying be ridiculous. Don't sell it, don't list it for half the value that it's really worth,
Hmm.
because that's not a sensible way of bringing it. But give me an average price point in your neighborhood or in your community that your home would be selling for.
The average price for the latest update was $375,000 in October.
Okay, and give me an
That's a
example
benchmark
of
price.
what that house looks like. Three
Yeah,
bedroom?
three bedroom, two bath home. Um, it's for that price, that would be the average for the whole market. So Charlottetown, that same place would be more like let's say 450.
Okay.
Yeah,
And on our what's the days on market?
about 45.
Okay. So if I wanted $450,000 for my listing,
Hmm.
and let's say there were two or three homes on that street that
Yep,
had sold for $450,000,
yep.
if I got called in to the neighbor's house to say, my neighbor just got 450,
Hmm.
sell my house, I would list it for 399.9.
Yep.
Okay. I would say we're going seller's direction,
Hmm.
that offers will be viewed. 1 week from today,
Mhm.
we will consider a preemptive offer. So you don't have to wait the 1 week, provided you're significantly over asking, no conditions, a bank draft with the offer, and you allow my seller 24 hours to consider your offer.
Yeah.
That 24 hours is really for me to go back to the market if an offer comes in that's
That you really,
acceptable.
that's acceptable.
Yeah, to broadcast it to anyone that has already seen the home
Hmm.
and let them know that we've changed the rules. We're no longer waiting a week
Hmm.
to be fair to your seller and
Yes.
also to be fair to the other agents and the other buyers. And that is, there's no reason why it's kind of like an auction, isn't it?
Yep.
Where letting the market and the seller still has the right to decline any offer at their sole discretion.
Yep.
So they're not obligated to accept an offer just because you brought them an offer.
Hmm.
And it really opens it up to the market.
Hmm.
It makes sure that your seller will never question, David, did we leave money on the table here?
Right. Because
No,
you
we
had
didn't, because
multiples. Hmm.
we allowed a week. We had 30 people come through your home. We had 6 offers. That question will never come up ever again.
Yeah.
And you know you're doing the right thing for your seller because you're now creating market value. If they're not happy with what the results are, at that point, I would then increase the price like everybody else after week one back to 449.9.
Hmm.
We reduce prices all day long. It makes the house look bad. Why are we not increasing prices when the house is not selling at
Love it.
the bidding strategy?
Yeah.
And that's been my strategy the entire time.
Yeah.
Week
And then if
one,
you want to
sometimes
get
you're going to
get in there, right? If you're the buyer and you see one
exactly.
of Faisal's listings come up, it's like better act. So that also
And
creates an energy so that it increases the odds that the seller's going to get the best price for that reason as well. And that's part of your brand.
you nailed it. Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Hmm.
You're going to get them a better price, and you're making sure that you're creating a competitive situation that they never feel that they left money on the table.
Do you have more? Do you have a few more minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Um, for discuss your investment strategy, focusing on value appreciation rather than cash flow. You invest in liquid assets like single family homes, liquid relative to, say, apartment buildings, single family homes, townhouses, or semi detached properties, accepting minor negative cash flow in certain circumstances for equity growth as the mortgage is being paid down. How has this approach evolved since your book, which came out in 2020, and given the less consistent home values in Ontario over that period of time?
I haven't pivoted from that strategy. Yes, we have greater negative cash flow right now because of higher interest rates,
Hmm.
but we've also been able to purchase properties at a 20 to 30% discount.
Hmm.
When this market turns around with the interest rates that are starting to come down,
Hmm.
that's going to start creating this appreciation factor on multiples. So, yes, I am going to pay on the average home in my region over the next 3 years, ten to $12,000 more in interest costs,
Yep. Okay.
but I'm buying at a 25% discount.
Hmm.
So if the value of that property goes up, which we're expecting next year to be up 7 to 8%,
Hmm.
on the average price of an $800,000 home,
Yes.
that's a significant increase right there in 1 year. So that $8 to $10,000 loss, I'm going to more than make up on appreciation. And the reason that I still stick to the same fundamentals on what types of properties that I'm buying, because I don't want the value of the property connected to a cap rate. I don't
Yep.
want the value of my property connected to the rental rate. I
Right.
want an exit strategy to be there that a first-time home buyer will buy it, somebody downsizing will buy it, another investor will buy it. I
Hmm.
don't need to find an institutional buyer to buy my 80-unit apartment building or
Yeah.
my multi-million dollar plaza.
Hmm.
I invest in that,
Oh, you
but
do.
it's not, I do, but it's not my primary
Hmm.
investment, is not in that. That is something that I've come up to over the last 35 years of investing in the ma and pa type of homes
Mhm.
has allowed me and afforded me the opportunity to extract equity to buy plazas, buy land, buy development properties, get involved in other aspects. But that's a different business altogether. The core business on building wealth for me has always been single family type of residences that are easy to exit out of, easy to
Mhm.
finance,
Mhm.
easy to leverage,
Mhm.
as opposed to trying to get a commercial bank loan on a commercial plaza
Mhm.
or a multifamily property. You know, you have to go through hoops to get financing, and your rates are high.
Do you usually maximize the amortization?
I try to keep my amortization at 20 years.
20 years. Okay, cool.
20 years payments biweekly. My goal is always to pay down the debt. And especially now that I'm getting older, I'd like to be able to get to, at 60 years of age,
Mhm.
another 5 to 6 years from now, to be at the point where so I stopped leveraging those properties about
Mhm.
10, 12 years ago. So
Right.
at the 20-year mark, I stopped refinancing, I stopped leveraging those
Mhm.
so that it would pay down
Yep.
very, very quickly. So
Yes.
in the last 10 years, um, I've been able to create my portfolio, which is virtually debt free.
Right.
And that would allow me to almost replace my income and not alter my lifestyle as a result of not having income if I chose to exit, which I don't ever have any plans on doing.
Yeah, and it's also it gives you a bigger cushion if there was some kind of downturn.
Absolutely. And it gives you opportunity. If you needed money, you quickly can leverage those properties because they have no debt on them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, You talked briefly about monetizing your license. Can you explain just a little bit more how you use your vantage point as a realtor to find investments, but then other ways maybe that you monetize your license? You mentioned investing in startups, real estate startups. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting way. Like one of the things I like about following your story and is learning how dynamic of an approach that you take to these things and you don't think of everything just in the same way as everybody else, it very much appears. So, yeah, if you could just address that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
I didn't want to put my eggs in one basket and say, well, I'll just open up brokerages and have lots of agents work for me because then I'm still in the same field, in the same
Mhm.
aspect, but I wanted to be real estate related
Yes.
without without my expertise having to be deployed in it and or my management having to be deployed and being deployed for that business. So I took an active interest in various startups that include property management startups that are based with AI in the background,
Hmm.
doing credit checks, doing applications, doing the marketing,
Hmm.
creating a rating for a tenant,
Hmm.
setting up a program where the tenant can ask for something to be repaired. It contacts the contractor. The invoicing is done to the landlord, and we manage all of this. So
Hmm.
I have 114 properties that I have under management,
Yes.
and we have a full-time property manager that's on my payroll handling that. So that's a part of monetizing my
Right.
license. The other aspect of it is just putting money out there with a venture capital fund where specifically based on real estate. So, writing doing your appointment scheduling. So we are right now working on AI app which takes your voice. So it's like, hi, it's David, just confirming that we're still on for our podcast this afternoon.
Hmm.
And it's virtual David calling, but
Hmm.
in David's voice. And that's the idea behind this. It's connected to your calendar. If there's a change, the client says, no, today at 3 o'clock is not good. Let's do it for tomorrow. It can go onto the calendar. Check your calendar. Are you free? Yes. Provides the Zoom link back to David. Here you go. We're all set. Tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock is going to be the new podcast.
Very, very creative.
So this creating feature sheets, creating just templates, and just contact management, just
Hmm.
a way to almost not to eliminate your assistants,
Hmm.
but to give your assistants more time for for that real life contact and not
Mhm.
getting so caught up in the data entry and the scheduling and all
Mhm.
that stuff that
More
takes up a
productive
lot.
output per hour. Yeah, very
Exactly.
good.
So those are the types of things that I like investing in, and it's been good. And lastly, the point of monetizing your license and creating sort of an exit strategy
Mhm.
is if you were to say, okay, today's the last day that I'm going to actively sell or list real estate
Mhm.
properties. There's no reason for you to hang your license
Mhm.
and take off to Florida, like I talk about in my book. What you want to do is create a business model that can survive you.
Mhm.
And as long as you stay licensed, you can continue collecting referral fees. One of those ways is to have a strong social media presence,
Mhm.
to have social media accounts that
Mhm.
you can say, okay, this is something that has 30,000 followers. Um, Here is the format that I have been following. You can also follow this format.
Mhm.
Here is my Instagram handle. Here's my Facebook handle, my TikTok handle. You manage it, okay? And you start posting content in that store.
Mhm.
Now that's one. Number two is your website. My website is actually older than Google. It's called
Mhm.
homeshack.com. You're too young to probably remember this, but Radio Shack used to be a big thing back in the day.
Oh, I remember
And
it.
yeah, and Home Shack was sort of a lift off of that. And
Cool.
it kind of resonated with that audience back then because they would think Radio Shack. It's like Home Depot, that whole idea. So it was
Mhm.
like Radio Shack, Home Shack. It was
Mhm.
that concept.
Mhm.
That website I can sell if I wanted to get out of the business, but I wouldn't want to get out of the business. I would just have someone power that website,
Mhm.
and any business that's procured from that, again, is monetizable.
Mhm.
My phone number, 519-624-5555. There's a number that people have seen for 36 years.
Mhm.
That's the listing hotline.
Mhm.
That's the number that the calls come in at.
Mhm.
Can can you imagine me just shutting that phone number down today? Why would I
Oh,
do that? Right?
yeah.
So why not monetize that by having a number and create a number that's catchy? Like for me, 5555 was a great number because everybody knows that's Faisal's hotline.
Well, maybe I'll just say while people are listening that the home selling hotline on PEI is 902-940-5455, and that is my personal cell phone. One more question before we sign off, Faisal. Um, actually, maybe I'll show the cover of your book. For anyone interested, is the book. This is the book. It is called The Real Deal: Learning from the Top Realtor in Canada, now the top realtor in the world. So the proof's kind of there. One last question. Your parents initially worried that you might be perceived as just a peddler when you entered real estate. How can real estate agents transcend those stereotypes?
It's so important to hold yourself to a high professional standard, to be thoughtful in the words that you're using, be mindful in how you deliver your message to people, the way in which you act with people, how you interact with people, can elevate your persona. It can elevate you from being seen as the peddler or, for lack of a better term, used car salesperson to being someone who has value. I use my social media channels very effectively to provide information that is not it's not a call to action to buyers and sellers to call me because, hey, call me if you're interested in buying or selling your home. It's actual information that they may not be thinking about,
Mhm.
like how do I create my portfolio so that there's an inheritance? How do I save tax on passing money down to
Mhm.
my offspring? How do I get into the market using multi-level partnering as opposed to trying to save up all by myself? So
Mhm.
just different out of the box type of ways of basically bringing to the limelight opportunities to people and giving them information that they can ponder, like things like, how do you save yourself from fraud? What's the purpose of title insurance? All these things that we as realtors take for granted that people
Mhm.
probably know about this. business. They already know about insurance, and they already know about trust, and they already know about taxation. And if you don't have the information, or if you're not well versed in that field, get somebody on that is on your social media channel. So every other day at 6 a.m., I post on at Faisal Susiwala on Instagram, a little tidbit. It's 30 seconds. And it talks about a hot topic. Where am I getting these topics from? I'm listening to what's out there in my community.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching the local news. And then I'm seeing how does that relate to what we do? And then bringing it right down to the local scale. We are in a city of Cambridge here where we have roundabouts everywhere. I don't know. Do you have lots of
We have
roundabouts?
lots of roundabouts. We've got, they're doing a great job with the roundabouts.
Great. And so my biggest pet peeve with the roundabouts is they've got the pedestrian walkway right in the middle of the roundabout.
Right.
So just as you're accelerating out, somebody's crossing, you got to slam the brake, and the guy behind is going to run into you. So we talk about things like that. So it's
Mhm.
just really honing in on what really matters to the community. Is there too much density? Is there not enough density? Is there enough funding coming in? Are we building the affordable home statuses that we need to do? Are we getting enough starts in the housing market? So just talking about things that are thought-provoking, that engage people's interests, and that's where again having a base where people will come to creates more value for you as
Mhm.
an agent, and creates value for your community as well.
Well, I really appreciate you making time for this, Faisal, and good luck. Do you think you're going to be number one in the world again this year?
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. We'll find out in a month.
Yeah, way to go. Really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your knowledge and experience with us here.
Thank you very much for having me on, David.